Simon Sinek created a simple model for understanding purpose called the Golden Circle. He posits most organizations understand what they do, what goods and services they produce, what offerings they bring to the markets they're engaged in. And fewer companies know how they deliver results. I think of the how as the secret sauce: procedures, practices, relationships, methods, the means by which value is created. Simon goes on to suggest that even fewer companies know why they exist, where an organization's ultimate purpose is for existing, or the impacts it creates in the world aren't well understood by every individual in the enterprise. Why is the domain of motivation, it's the domain of alignment, it's the domain of vision. Today, we're going to focus on the how, that middle circle, the middle layer, and how how bridges the why and the what of transformation, how it kind of brings them together and binds them. Specifically, I want to share some of the work we've been doing to leverage the Dojo approach to immersive learning in service of large-scale systemic change. Before we commit to changing, we need to make choices. The main problem in this is that there are so very many choices today. This image from Deloitte broke the internet a while back because, it's absurd. It overwhelms while communicating the sheer quantity of frameworks, practices, and tools in the agile landscape. There's a ridiculous quantity of so-called best practices, and as many practices as there are consultants trying to sell you on them. This image provides a visual of the paradox of choice teams and leaders face, and the analysis paralysis that might accompany the act of choosing. I don't know about you, but this picture fills me with anxiety. And then there's buzzword bingo and its close cousin, resume-driven development. The fashion scene of practices and tools produces, fashion victims, where teams engage only lightly with the flavor of the day, foregoing fluency with deep practice in favor of gotta collect them all mentality. It's easy in this milieu to get lulled into the belief that silver bullets do in fact exist, and we've known for a long time they don't. This image also fills me with anxiety, and maybe you're feeling that too. Let's let the anxiety dissipate a bit before we move on. So here's a baby sloth, just a baby sloth doing baby sloth things. No troubles in the world, just taking a beat, hanging from a tree. Let the cuteness of the baby sloth wash over you and breathe. Hang in there just like this baby sloth is hanging in there, and let's move on. A recurring problem I see in the enterprises I work for is that there are multiple concurrent and disconnected transformation efforts going on. When I start working with a new client, I like to ask the question, how many transformations are going on at the moment? The answer is invariably many. It's not uncommon to see agile lean workflow, DevSecOps, engineering craft, project to product, and other what type initiatives vying for a team's attention at the same time. In short, the learning experience is disconnected, disjointed, and lends itself to transformation fatigue at the team level. If a team is spending all of their time in training, when do they actually get work done? Beyond all that, we're letting a lot of learning about how to transform fragment and evaporate. When we have multiple transformations going on, that usually means each transformation has its own operating model. And what's more, the people operating these models aren't always communicating or cooperating. They're facing similar risks without sharing solutions, all while building a lot of redundant and wasteful apparatus. From both a learning and organization and an economic perspective, it's just plain madness. You have to ask, why is it this way? Artist and cultural strategist Hugh MacLeod may have nailed it with this classic cartoon depicting a pathological bureaucratic organizational structure. Losers at the bottom, clueless in the frozen middle, and sociopaths up top. Now, this is an extreme and funny in an indulge your inner cynic kind of way image, but there's probably some painful truth in here. Are transformation leaders building little empires, or are they cooperating to create a better team experience? Westrom's typology is a model often used to diagnose corporate cultures. In the Dojo immersive learning world, we're attempting to create a safe space where teams can learn and practice skills that help them achieve better outcomes sooner. Dojos aspire to lead significant change by creating a generative subculture, that's the column on the right, within the larger culture, which may lag toward bureaucratic, pathological, or some hybrid of the two. Quick example, taking just the failure-themed row in this chart highlighted in yellow. In the dojo, we value learning and understand failure is part of that process. Failure is tuition. Failure, at least when we learn from it, leads to a greater chance of success. So something, perhaps culture, is broken when we organize for transformation. I'd like to pivot toward how we might make changes more effectively using the dojo as the how of transformation. To do this, I'll employ a little bit of a loose analogy using chefs, kitchens, and dining experiences. Let's say we had one big old restaurant and this restaurant has multiple chefs. Our first chef, Chef Chang, is leading his firm's shift from a project focus to a product focus org. He's tasked with enabling numerous teams to work in a market and customer obsessed way, and various skills and practices go with this, such as product discovery, UX, research, and overall experimental mindset. These are his dishes or his recipes. At the same time, Chef Childs is championing better engineering craft and technique. TDD and refactoring, trunk-based development, ensemble programming. Her techniques are in service of more sustainable and economically viable design. And, like Chef Chang, she's contending for team attention. Also in the transformation mix, we have a Swedish chef of great renown who is bringing the goodness of automation and importance of security to the table. DevSecOps adoption is one of the many priorities in our fictitious organization. And when we've put all this great software into production, now availability of our services comes into focus. Time for a trip to the flavor town known as site reliability engineering. My point is, it's not uncommon to see several transformations proceeding in parallel. What's less common is to see the transformational leaders in cooperation with each other. They are competing for team attention, and this is a big problem. A problem we could call too many cooks. Each of these chefs typically has their own restaurant with its own kitchen. But why? The recipes may change, but there's huge overlap in preparation and operation. Dojo, in this analogy, is the kitchen. It's the place where teams go to learn and practice, sure, but it's also the place where new change offerings can be perfected and composed into heterogeneous team offerings. Dojo is a single kitchen with multiple chefs offering multiple and often complementary change initiatives that harmonize into a single team experience. Teams come to a single restaurant and order multiple courses from potentially different chefs. Challenge 1 here represents a team attempting to break down their work into small, vertically sliced stories. With these stories, they'll get into a test-driven workflow. Both practices come from the engineering craft menu offered up by Chef Childs. And while they do this, they'll be advancing their continuous integration and deployment capabilities. These are offered up by our legendary Swedish chef. Meanwhile, in a second challenge, a team is moving to a fully capable product team, maybe from a feature team. They're going to be engaged in continuous discovery and delivery. They might practice validating a big hypothesis with something like a Google design sprint, all while paying back some irksome technical debt that's accruing a bit too much interest. This team is pulling from two initiatives, Chef Chang's and Chef Childs. And so it goes. The big innovation here is that transformation now centers on the team experience and not arbitrary silos of leadership and practice taxonomy. Teams can select the skills they need to build that are relevant to them their work and their stage of maturity. Relevance replaces fatigue. But this model goes further than that. Implicit to the dojo is a special kind of challenge, a challenge where we onboard new learning capabilities onto the dojo kitchen, platform, and menu. Here we have Nathan Myhrvold, who's a former CTO of Microsoft who turned into a pioneer in the field of molecular gastronomy, basically using laboratory techniques to create wild new dishes. I thought of him as an especially relevant analogous chef for an organization that wanted to roll out data science and ML ops capabilities to their engineering teams. Chef Myhrvold's team would enter the dojo as an enablement team. Their challenge would focus on adding offerings to the dojo menu, onboarding coaches, creating meaningful metrics that correlate to the impacts promised by an effective data science practice, developing playbooks, and building escalation protocols that will help get subsequent teams focusing on data science unstuck when they encounter problems. And now we have all 5 chefs offering different learning topics to teams going through a transformation. Each of these chefs benefits from common capabilities offered by the dojo kitchen: consistent measurement, intake, marketing, coaching, operations, and escalation with a single on cord available to all teams. More than that, each of these chefs occupies a seat on an advisory board that guides and governs the evolution of the dojo. They all get a cooperative say in guiding the place of the way. Perhaps the most powerful thing in this model is that enablers, the chefs, are focused on team experience, the population that they're enabling. I contrast this with an all too frequent anti-pattern I see in the enterprise where enablers are mostly focused inwardly on building platforms rather than on their service design and empowering their downstream teams with new capabilities. So now it's time for us to connect the what, the how, and the why. I see dojos as a solution to connect the why of transformation to the what. Of course, we need a solid why for any change initiative to succeed. We need to communicate, even over-communicate, a vision where people can understand how they contribute to the fulfillment of that vision's intended impact. This is the job of transformation leadership, and for sure, setting good vision is an art and science unto itself. You need a solid set of strategies that make the change practical and tangible once you've set that vision. Mostly the transformations I'm a part of are about adding capabilities to teams. This is the outer what ring in Sinek's golden circle. These capabilities are aimed at making teams more autonomous, giving them more degrees of freedom, and giving teams full ownership in defining their mission and finding a pathway to deliver value. The term shift left describes this pretty well, where once downstream activities split across teams take residence in a single team capable of most everything. You could call this a product team. And lastly, the how. In my work, this is the dojo. It provides the venue, the collaboration space for teams to learn and practice what's most relevant to them at the moment. As a team hits a maturity plateau, encounters a semi-wicked problem, or changes their mission in some way, they can return to the dojo to prioritize learning over delivery and become more capable. The big change in this model and mindset is that teams might pull from multiple transformation visions to learn what makes most sense to them. It's team experience over organizational silos.